Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Business Spotlight. I'm joined today by Joyce, and Joyce is extraordinarily passionate about all things to do with autism. And I'm not going to do any more of an introduction than that. We're going to let Joyce do most of the speaking. So Joyce, welcome to the call.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Joyce. So tell us a little bit more about where your connections with your interest in autism came from and how that translated initially into the kind of things that you were doing.
Okay, so if I go back to my very early childhood, I always knew I was different. And I can remember even preschool thinking I was probably an alien from another planet. And I never quite fitted. I didn't fit in with the group of girls I hung around with and work and things like that. But as modern things changed, and I've got 3 daughters and 11 grandchildren and 1 great-granddaughter, as the grandchildren started getting diagnosed with autism, that started to ring with who I am. And so I decided at the tender age of 58 to pursue a diagnosis of my own. Now, I had gone to college at the age of 40 to get some GCSEs, because back in the day I'd left school at 15 with no qualifications. And I was then diagnosed with dyslexia. When I went for a diagnosis at 58, the first thing they diagnosed me with was ADHD and dyspraxia. But the process to actually get diagnosed with autism, you have to fill in 3 questionnaires. One you fill in, one someone knows you really well fills in, and one who knows you as a child. Now, the problem as you get older, there's less people around to fill that 3rd questionnaire in. So both my parents are deceased, didn't have contact with old friends. Obviously, most of my teachers would have been deceased. I had no way of filling in that 3rd questionnaire. So my first attempt, the guy at the end, he said, I'm 98% certain you're autistic, but I can't give you a diagnosis because you didn't fill in the 3rd questionnaire. And because I'm quite stubborn, I went back to my doctor, started the process again. And this time I did get the diagnosis. I do now know that they used the wrong terminology, but even so, they did diagnose me with autism, but with a little thing at the end, NOS, not otherwise specified, because it was impossible for me to get that 3rd questionnaire filled in. And so now I'm studying for a PhD because what else do you do with your pension? And I'm looking at why is it so difficult for us older women to get diagnosed with autism. And just on another slight note, I've actually looked at the ancestry of my family. From my mum down, there's 54 descendants, and 66% of us are on the autistic spectrum. So
there's a strong genetic link going through there.
Absolutely. And out of all of us, only 1 has any severe learning difficulties, not over severe, lives independently, and that was caused by a traumatic birth.
Okay.
But other than that, we're all normal to higher.
So one of the themes that's coming through really powerfully here is education. I mean, you've spoken almost in passing about how you went back and got your GCSEs, and now how you're moving on and doing a doctorate and driven by your passion. I understand that you're looking to help educate others in autism as well. Tell us a little bit about how you're doing that and why you're doing that.
Yeah, so my wife and I have been running an LLP for several years, and we enjoy doing that. We work with disabled university students, but in the summer we decided to launch a CIC, and we now offer training programs. My wife is very different from me. She's a member of Mensa, she's an academic, and does different courses to me, but I do courses, so I do 2. One is autism and young people, one is autism and older people. And those courses you can get a CPD. We're associates of the CPD. But we're right at the very beginning. So we're actually going to do some podcasts, put them behind a paywall. And it's all about helping people understand what autism is, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. People generally think that an autistic person rocks, flaps their hands, not very bright. That's not the normal way an autistic person is.
So a lot of business people are hopefully going to see this podcast that we're doing. What message have you got to people who are perhaps already employing somebody with autistic spectrum tendencies and may or may not be aware of it, or somebody that is looking to do so?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with a couple of companies where they know nothing. They didn't know their employers were. And the general feeling is if somebody is autistic, get rid of them. Because putting things in place is very complicated, and it's not. So I'm going to give you a little example. A lady before COVID used to write presentations for people. And then COVID hit, and we all went on Zoom, and we all love Zoom. And they expected her not only to write the presentations, but to present them. And she would have 70 plus people on Zoom all at the same time. And she did it very, very well, but it stressed her out. And in the end, she went along and she said to her boss, I can't do this anymore. I'm going home. I'm really upset. I'm really anxious. I'm not coping. And the response from the company was, well, she'll have to go then. I was called in, thankfully, and I said, well, why don't you continue to let her write the presentations, but just get somebody else who is confident to do presentations to large groups of people to do it. And I said, also, she's working in a big office full of people. Can you either move her out of the office to a place of her own, or put her in a corner, somewhere where she's a little bit further away from people? And they went, and is that all we've got to do? And I went, yeah, it's really, really simple. It's not a complicated process. And she's still working there and everything works fine. She writes the presentations, somebody else does the presentations. And actually they moved her just into the corner of the big room. And she's perfectly happy working. So it wasn't complicated. And I must ask, Gavin, that's not just for autistic people. Oh. A lot of disabled people are marginalised. A young lady finished her degree, kept applying for jobs. They wanted to employ her, but they said, our building won't accommodate you because you're in a wheelchair. And she was on her 20th interview and was getting the same response. And they were saying, we'd really like to, but we don't have lifts and it's on the 3rd floor. And then they said, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Over the weekend, we're going to move the 3rd floor office to the ground floor, the ground floor office to the 3rd floor. And please, could you start on Monday? The solutions are much, much simpler than people think they're going to be.
If you've got real talent or the potential for real talent, and these people do bring a unique perspective to businesses as well, don't they? Particularly those with autistic spectrum issues, and that their way of thinking. It's almost like untapped gold, but it's always, isn't it? It's always about understanding the needs of the other person and adapting to them. Yeah. We tend to look at it through our own eyes rather than through other people's.
Yeah, and it doesn't, the word disability, I don't particularly like the word. I mean, there are people that would say my wife is disabled because of how her brain works. And they would have to accommodate her because she would get bored. There's Down syndrome people now, though, in theatre and modelling and things like that. And they love it. And, my passion, what I want to see is equity for all. Okay, so not equality, equity. Yeah. So that we're all treated exactly the same.
Yeah. I totally understand that. I mean, a lot of my work as a business coach is around communication, and why teams particular find it difficult to communicate with each other, and sometimes businesses with their customers. And it's always because we fail to see the communication profile of the other person. It's how they like to, how they see the world, you know, how they like to be communicated to, whether they're motivated by tasks and success or people and relationships, whether they're extroverts, whether they're introverts. But in all of these things, you know, whether it's disabilities, I know you don't like the word, or it's a particular way that we think or the particular way that we communicate, it's always about understanding that and adapting to it. And that's what unlocks the
Yeah.
potential in the other people, isn't it? I mean, in many
It's
cases.
Yeah, it is. I mean, so if I talk about myself, one of my gifts is that I think outside the box. In fact, I think so far outside the box, you can't even see the box. So I used to have a job at doctors, and the doctor would perhaps trying to get some results, and he couldn't do it. The secretaries couldn't do it. The practice manager couldn't do it. And then eventually they'd ask me, and 20 minutes later, I'd give them the results. Okay, so that's really great, right? So they used my talent. But I also take things literally. So one day, a doctor got really cross with another receptionist and told me to sort it out. I took that literally. The young girl made a complaint and I got the sack. Mm. And that's, again, I mean, it was pre me knowing I was autistic and things like that. But even so, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are different. In fact, I can't think of anybody that's the same as anybody else.
But if that doctor had understood your tendency to take things literally, then he or she may have worded the request differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thereby unlocking the power. Okay.
Yeah.
So where do you see the future of your work now? Obviously, you've got a lot on your plate. You're doing a doctorate and various other things. What's the immediate future for you in terms of your support work?
Okay, well, I've got another 2 years on my PhD. I'm hoping that over the next 2 to 3 months, all the CPD and podcast stuff will all get, you know, we've got courses to do ourselves. But my long-term plan in 5 years is actually we'll close the LLP and only do the CIC work. Yeah. I want to do more public speaking. I want to educate. That is my biggest passion. Educate people that will. Gavin, I'm sure people say to autistic people all the time, well, everybody's a little autistic. Please don't say that. Okay, and I go to them, please go to the National Autistic Society website and there's a checklist. And I guarantee everybody can tick a couple of boxes. You've got to be able to tick a load to be autistic, but you can. So they go, yeah, see, I can prove I'm a little bit autistic. And I go, now go to the Down syndrome website. There's a tick list there. Yeah. You can tick some of those boxes too. Yeah. We're all a little bit
of everything, yeah.
Because you know what? We're all human beings. Yes. And what I want to see is, and I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime, Gavin, I'm already very nearly 69 years old. What I want to see is we stop. Look, Gavin, you're a man and I'm a woman. The biggest difference between you and me is that your muscular skeleton is far more powerful than mine. But I had 3 babies and I gave birth to them and you can't. Other than that,
I would really struggle with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we always say if men had the first baby, that would be the population dealt with. But it's like, Gavin, you know, apart from the fact that you're a man and I'm a woman, we're both human. So if your skin was a different color, we're still human. Yeah. If you was in a wheelchair or I am autistic, we're still humans. If we started treating everybody as humans with kindness and love and respect, equity for all. That's my message, Gavin.
Joyce, and it's really powerful. Your passion has come through. It's been a real joy talking to you, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and your time with us today.
Thank you, Gavin. I really appreciate having this opportunity. Thank you.